Welcome to EPG Pathshala on the subject Social Medicine and Community Health. We shall be discussing the module National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, Japanese Encephalitis, Dengue and Chikungunya. This paper module belongs to the paper National Policy, Health Policies and Programs, and this has been developed by a team comprising of myself, Professor Devendra Kumar Taneja from Delhi, and the content has been written by Dr. Ramesh Burma. The learning objectives that has been set for this session is one should be able to state the problem of Japanese encephalitis, mention the strategies for elimination of Japanese encephalitis, then give an overview of the strategies of Japanese encephalitis control, state problem of dengue and dengue hemorrhagic fever and chikungunya fever, mention strategies for dengue and dengue hemorrhagic fever and chikungunya fever elimination. Now, as far as Japanese encephalitis is concerned, it is primarily a zoonotic disease. This disease is transmitted by vector, mosquito Culex, Bismuth group, and Culex tritaniumicus is the most important vector. The transmission cycle is maintained in animal reservoirs or JE virus like pigs and water birds, and they are the amplifier host. It means the JE virus increases in number in that organisms. Outbreak of Japanese encephalitis is quite common in those areas where there is a close interaction between human beings and pigs or birds. In fact, Japanese encephalitis is the major contributor to acute encephalitic syndrome, which is caused by other types of viruses and bacteria. Man is the dead end host of, because JE is not transmitted from one person to another person, and so the disease, and also it has been observed that in a particular area or particular village, number of cases are only limited, or one or two, are because the viremia is transient. JE has been reported from different parts of the country in India. The first case came to our knowledge in the year 1955, and it was detected by CMC Vellore. The disease is endemic. Endemic by this term we mean that there is a habitual presence of Japanese encephalitis in 17 states, of which Assam, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal have been reporting outbreaks repeatedly. And Uttar Pradesh, particularly the eastern part, particularly the Gorakhpur belt, has been quite predominantly affected by this disease. In year 2010, 5,167 cases and 679 deaths due to acute encephalitis syndrome were reported. And of all the cases acute encephalitis syndrome, a considerable amount of them are being contributed by Japanese encephalitis. Other agents may be waterborne, that is bacteria and other viruses. During the year 2011, 8,249 cases of AES, that is acute encephalitis syndrome, and 1,269 deaths have been reported. The point that has to be noted that this is a disease which contributes to death. Case fatality is high, and therefore we have to be very careful. In the year 2012, 2013, 2014, respectively 8,344, 7,025, and 10,085 cases were reported of AES, with 1,256, 1,273, and 1,770 deaths respectively have been reported. This data signifies that there is a continuous occurrence of outbreaks of AES, including JE, and there is also reported deaths by this condition. And because of death, there is a hue and cry in the public, and as a public health person should be very careful that the efforts should be taken to at the reduction of morbidity, but mortality should be certainly curtailed. In the year 2014, the state of Uttar Pradesh has reported the maximum cases and death of AES, 3,329 AES cases and 627 deaths. So there has been till 30th April 2015, a total number of AES cases were reported 782 is 78 deaths in the country. The figures just that have been enumerated, that it is a that Japanese encephalitis as well as acute encephalitis syndrome has remained a significant problem in the country for many years. And this disease, which is mainly a genetic disease, can be taken care of by many measures. There is no specific treatment for JE, but certainly capacity building of JE management, particularly clinical component for that person, supportive management has been given. Clinical management is only the supportive care, but in the acute phase, maintenance of fluid and electrolyte balance becomes important. What is the point that has to be noted that there should be a strong IEC drive, and people should be brought to the health facility uh, as early as possible so that this case fatality can be reduced or mortality can be cut down. Enough efforts have been taken to give support to the health system so that they will be able to manage these cases when they come to their respective centers. The preventive measures are directed at reducing the vector density and in taking personal protection against mosquito bites. JE vaccine is produced in limited quantities at the Central Research Institute, Kasauli. But JE vaccination, 3 doses of the vaccine provide immunity lasting a few years. Vaccination is not recommended at the time of outbreak control as a control measure, as it takes at least 1 month after second dose to develop antibodies as protective levels. The point that has to be internalized that if there is an impending outbreak of JE in a particular area, then prior, at least 1 month prior to that, second dose must be completed. There is no point in immunizing people at the time of outbreak. Piggeries may be kept away 4 to 5 kilometers from human dwellings. If piggeries and human beings are together, chance of transmission are low. So these are the strategies that can be taken care of. But this will take care only of those cases which are related to JE. Not all AE cases are going to be taken care of by this. For that, other inputs are needed. Goal and objective of the program is to reduce morbidity, mortality, and disability in children due to JE and AES. It has been observed that the disease gives a lot of disability situations or residual effects in the children suffering from JE. Objective is to strengthen and expand JE vaccination in affected districts, to strengthen surveillance, vector control, case management, and timely referral of serious and complicated cases. Time is essential in public health, and so is in the case of JE. If the JE cases are to be, mortality has to be cut down, cases must be referred as early as possible to the institutions. And for this purpose, strong IC drives for the committee members and available facilities has to be there. To increase access to safe drinking water and proper sanitation facilities to target population in affected and rural urban areas. Safe drinking water and proper sanitation will take care of particularly those cases. One is that proper sanitation, particularly the breeding sites will be less, and more important is that it will take care of those AES cases which are not caused by Japanese encephalitis. So uh, we have to estimate disability burden due to JE and ES and to provide for adequate facilities for physical, mental, medical, neurological and social rehabilitation of these cases. And to improve nutrition of children at risk of JE and ES, that's also an important component of the package of overall management. And to carry out intensified information education and communication and behavioral change communication activities regarding JE and AES. Because this program, the success will depend on how people are aware about that what are the probable manifestations of Japanese encephalitis and where are the facilities where they can get treatment. And they should be also well equipped with the information that time is essence. As early as they reach it to the facility, chances of survival and residual damage will be less. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has taken various prevention and control measures for AES. There is a need to put in place a multi-pronged strategy and conversions with different ministries. That is, the all ministries must join hands for proper rural development, safe water supply and sanitation, and also mechanism for strong IEC efforts. Under consideration of Government of India, an integrated approach with the number of ministries have been suggested. Now, once just to summarize that JE is a problem which not only causes morbidity, it causes disability, it causes mortality. And continuous occurrence of JE in India clearly reflects that there are strategic gaps. A number of things can be done. The most important is the vaccination of children from 1 to 4 year. 1 month prior to these children must receive second dose in order to be effective. And piggery industry has to be kept away so that and other insecticidal measures has to be taken care of. So vector density has to be reduced and capacity building of the health system to manage these cases efficiently has been taken care of. After discussing the program inputs for control of Japanese encephalitis and some glimpse about AES, we are going to discuss about control program for dengue and dengue hemorrhagic fever and dengue shot syndrome as well as chikungunya fever. Now, dengue and chikungunya are two mosquito-borne viral diseases of great public health concern in India because they are causing many epidemics. Though the epidemics are self-limiting, but many times they cause the deaths in these cases. And chikungunya is one disease that causes involvement of joints, and because of that, there becomes a big problem. Dengue virus and chikungunya virus are transmitted by the same species of mosquito, Aedes aegypti. As you all know that Aedes aegypti bites in the daytime, and it is also known as tiger mosquito. The breeding places of this Aedes aegypti is collections of water, particularly flower pots, swimming pools, coolers, and artificial collections of bottles and other artificial collections. Particularly, Aedes aegypti is becoming a great problem in the state of Kerala because of coconut shells. Dengue is a self-limiting acute viral disease and it is caused by arbovirus, particularly group D arbovirus, flaviviruses are responsible for this disease. It is self-limiting. It is acute condition and it is, as I said, that it is transmitted by infective bite of female Aegypti. The first case was detected in Vellore, Cincy Vellore. The disease manifests in the form of classical dengue fever and there may be other advances like dengue hemorrhagic fever or with SOP. SOP. Then, as far as the problem of dengue is concerned, dengue is endemic in 141 countries in the world, and roughly 50% of the world population are threatened by this virus. That is, 50% population are at risk. In India, the dengue cases are increased, and a number of processes are contributing to this: rapid urbanization, unplanned infrastructure development, improper water management or storage practices, lifestyle changes, and a number of domestic appliances like water coolers, flower pots, broken bottles, and so many other things that are contributing to increasing the mosquito density of Aedes aegypti, and that is responsible for this disease. This disease in India, dengue, has been endemic in 34 states and union territories. And during 1996, an outbreak of dengue was reported in Delhi in a big way. And since then, many outbreaks have taken been reported from different parts of the country, even from rural and remote areas. As far as population at risk in India is concerned, the roughly more than 100 million population is at risk in India for dengue. And since 1960, more than 50 outbreaks of dengue has taken place in the country. And in India, the dengue cases are increased, but to the point that needs to be taken into account that over mortality rate was 1.2% in 2007, though it dropped to 2.25 in 2013 by capacity building of the hospitals in terms of their management. This reduction is probably because of cumulative effects of like better patient management, increased diagnostic capabilities, better reporting. But one most important thing is that we, because of awareness building, many people have understood that only paracetamol in the time of fever, they will take only paracetamol tablets, and they can report to agency where quickly the diagnosis can be done and supportive care can be instituted. During the year 2014, 40,295 cases and 131 deaths by dengue were reported. Till 31st December 2015, 24, 82 cases and 7 deaths have been reported in the country. Dengue control program has been included in National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program in the year 2003 and 2004. So this National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program addresses the issue of malaria, filaria, JE, dengue, cholera, and chikungunya. The government of India, in consultation with the states, have identified 347 sentinel surveillance hospitals with laboratory support for augmentation of diagnostic facilities in the endemic state. This has been a very significant input because unless there are central surveillance hospitals or surveillance center units, probably we can't monitor trades. Though there are surveillance mechanisms, other surveillance mechanisms in terms of vector surveillance, in terms of disease surveillance under our integrated disease surveillance project, probable case definitions, diagnostic definitions, criteria, and confirmed criteria. These have been taken into account. But number of these sites are increasing to provide more diagnostic services for the dengue because and pragmatic surveillance procedures during interepidemic periods are also being taken care of. Further, for advanced diagnosis and backup support, protein effects referral laboratories have been identified and linked with the sentinel hospitals. So a number of measures are being taken care of. Even we to make these functional IgM capture ELISA test kits are provided through National Institute of Biology, Pune, free of cost. So diagnostic armamentarium has been enhanced so that cases of dengue can be diagnosed at early stage. Government of India has taken a number of steps for the control of dengue. So number one is the monitoring the situation through reports received from state health authorities. The routine reporting system that we have in the country for dengue, that is in the non-epidemic period, the reports must come every week on Monday. They send usually on Monday, and during epidemic periods on every day. So monitoring the situation through reports received from the state health authorities is provides significant direction that should be taken in the program. A midterm plan for prevention and control of dengue has been developed in 2011 and circulated to the states for implementation. And there are a number of components for this. The first component is surveillance, and both epidemiological surveillance and disease surveillance has to be continued. Now, disease surveillance, as far as disease surveillance is concerned, IDSP is taking care of. Every week during non-epidemic periods and on daily basis, these reports are being sent. And serological investigations are done during interepidemic periods so to monitor the trends of transmission of the disease. As far as vector surveillance is concerned, house index, vector index, and Bruto index, and so many indices are being calculated to see that what is the transmission potential of this disease. Legislative measures are also being instituted where the larva of disease are found. And the second important component has been case management, laboratory diagnosis, and clinical management. Laboratory diagnosis facilities have been extended, as I said earlier, and for clinical management, necessary supports have been given, even blood products in the form of plasma and separate things have been made available. And the capacity of the hospitals for clinical management has been enhanced, and both in terms of human resource development as well as through logistic provisions. Vector management, environmental source reduction is a key input. That is the water coolers, flower pots. They should be let dried once a week because that will terminate the life cycle of the Egyptian mosquito, which takes about 7 days. So once a week, observing dry day for these items could be very significant. Not leaving broken bottles, broken utensils on the top floor, and also coconut shells and other things can be an important vector control measures. Personal protection and is very important, but please remember that since this Aedes bites in the daytime, so full sleeve shirts, complete trousers will help, will reduce the bite, and insecticidal spray within the rooms doesn't play much because these Aedes sits in those things which are doesn't sit on the wall, sit on the cloth, sit on other things, but even and mattresses and so on. And that is why it may not be very efficient method. Personal protective devices and also some vaporizers can help. Legislation is the key to this. Legislative approach, particularly if any breeding place is found in a particular vicinity, that there is a legislative provisions so that that can be removed. So there are three approaches in public health. One is legislative approach, second is service approach, and third is educational approach. People must be informed that please keep once a week drying will help. People must be informed that uh, take protective measures in the daytime because this mosquito bites in the daytime. So many messages has to be given to the public so that this can be taken care of. Outbreak response. Whenever there is an outbreak, there should be epidemic preparedness in advance. By that we mean that there should be capacity to handle any impending outbreak of dengue or dengue hemorrhagic fever or dengue shock syndrome, so that the health system is capable of managing these cases. Unless the health systems are so outward response will reduce mortality, outward response will cut down the cases of dengue in future. Capacity building in terms of training of staff, strengthening of human resource and operational research, and also provisions for other inputs is necessary. And in order to implement legislative framework properly, the government's will in this direction is desired. Certainly, behavioral change communication, social mobilization, and IEC is an important component, particularly before when there's environmental conditions become very conducive for this. People should be well informed how dengue occurs, how the disease is transmitted, what are the preventive measures they can adopt, because it is very likely that when there is an impending emergency, when there is a disease which causes death, people are afraid of, and if the proper preventive measures are displayed at a proper pace, the community-based mobilizers are involved in this particular program, things will change. And information, education, communication, adopting different media, multimedia approach should be taken care of, so that there is a behavioral change in the people, and the breeding sites for dengue vector, that is the Aedes aegypti, is reduced. Intersectoral coordination with ministries of urban development, rural development, panchayat raj, surface transport, education sector is vital, because the key to success are three things, particularly intersectoral coordination, convergence of all programs up to critical point, and involving community in this mass campaign, that the dengue sites, the vector breeding sites be reduced and disease transmission can be taken care of. This should be also be made aware that facilities are there where any case of impending fever can go and get tested for whether they are suffering from dengue or not, and also they should be advised that what are the possible complications of this and how to take care of, and where are the facilities if dengue shock syndrome or dengue hemorrhagic fever occurs. Now, this disease, finally, in any program, we have to understand where we stand in terms of our achievements, and that can be done only by efficient monitoring and supervision. That is analysis of reports, review of deaths, field visits, and taking feedback. So, just to summarize, that dengue is a important disease of global concern. One can imagine that 50% of the global population is under potential threat of this disease, 141 countries. And strategies are very clear cut, that breeding places has to be reduced once a week, drying of these flower pots, washing, making dry coolers, and removing the artificial collections that will help in cutting down the reducing vector density and chances of. But certainly, since the day biter, efficient clothing in terms of full trousers, full shirts, and also other personal protective measures may help in prevention of occurrence of dengue. Now we are going to discuss about the one other component of the National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program, Kala-Jar Control Program. Kala-Jar is a very slow progressing indigenous disease caused by a protozoan parasite of genus Leishmania, which is transmitted to man by the bite of female phlebotomous sandfly. The Parasite primarily infects reticuloendothelial system and will be found in abundance in bone marrow, spleen, and liver. They are responsible for various syndromes in humans like Kala-Azar or visceral leishmaniasis, cutaneous leishmaniasis, mucocutaneous leishmaniasis, anthropolytic cutaneous leishmaniasis, zoonotic cutaneous leishmaniasis, post-Kala-Azar dermal leishmaniasis. Among these dermal leishmaniasis serves as the source of infection in majority of cases. In India, the visceral leishmaniasis is still an important disease. Post-Kala-Azar leishmaniasis is a condition where Leishmania donneri in its skin cells resides and develops there and manifests as dermal lesions. This disease if you look at the globally, there are about 88 countries in the world which are endemic to Kala-Azar, and among them 90% of cases are being contributed by India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sudan, and Brazil. These four or five countries come together. They contribute to about majority of the cases in the globe. In India, the problem is Kala-Azar is that it is confined to certain geographical areas, and there are about like Bihar, certain part of West Bengal, and other regions of the country. Though the vector of the disease, that is the Phlebotomus argentifex, is present globally, but there are two factors in the transmission of disease. One is the reservoir, and another is the vector. Simply presence of vector is not going to make a difference because there must be a reservoir also. As far as Bihar is concerned, the housing conditions are as such that favors the increasing density of phlebotomous sandfly, female phlebotomous sandfly, and that is the reason for why this disease is rampant in certain geographical areas, particularly in muddy soil. Their habitat is cracks and crevices of houses. Now, as far as problem statement is concerned, there are many districts in India which are endemic to this disease. Kala-Azar is currently endemic in 31 districts of Bihar, 11 districts of West Bengal, 6 districts of Uttar Pradesh, particularly eastern Uttar Pradesh, and 4 districts of Jharkhand. Nearly 130 million populations of India are at risk of the disease in these states. So, and in the year 2014, 9,241 cases of Kala-Azar and 11 deaths were reported from the country. Maximum cases of Kala-Azar were reported from Bihar, followed by Jharkhand and West Bengal. So Bihar is the heartland of Kala-Azar, and up to 28th February 2015, 1,184 cases of Kala-Azar were reported in India. In 1990-91, centrally sponsored Kala-Azar control program was launched in Bihar and West Bengal by the government of India. Looking at the problem of geographical distribution of the disease into certain areas, the program was launched in Bihar and West Bengal by the government of India so that these problems can be taken care of. And the components of the program has been primarily to detect Kala-Azar, to provide treatment to them, to do vector surveillance and other morbidity management techniques. It was brought out that the primary health systems must be brought out in the ambit of that. So, since 1991, when the centrally sponsored Kala-Azar program control program was launched in these two states, significant progress has taken place. Still, this disease has not reached the elimination stage. Now, we'll be discussing the next component, that is the Government of India provided Kala-Azar medicines, insecticides, technical support, and the state governments implemented the program through primary healthcare system, that is the network of sub-centers, PSCs, community health centers. Why it was implemented to the primary health centers? Because in that situation, the high information education and communication activities will be more, and most of the cases are coming to these systems also that they can be taken. The program was further intensified in the year 1991 and 92, which led to improved case registration through primary healthcare system. Now, the idea was that the, these PSC system were informed that how to detect these cases based on the important case definition was given to them, that is fever and more than 2 weeks, and other suspicion indexes were known to them so that they can at least be sensitized to pick up Kalajar cases. Although in the National Health Policy 2002, Kalajar was to be eliminated by 2010, which was not achieved, and therefore the target was further extended by Government of India by 2015. Now, once this Government of India started this program, then in 2003 and 2004, the Kalajar Control Program was merged with the National Vector Borne Disease Control Program because identifying the commonality of factors. So Kalajar became an integral part of this disease, although it is of geographical disease, it is confined to certain areas of the country only, but it became an integral part of the National Vector Borne Disease Control Program. Then, if you look at the various strategies for cholera remission program, the most important strategy is parasite elimination and disease management. That is, we are contemplating that the reservoir will be reduced. And if the reservoir is reduced, the cases are not there. Even if the vector is present, the disease will not, transmission will not take place. So the first approach was that efficient case detection and disease management. Early case detection and complete treatment has been considered the key strategy of Kala-Jar elimination. And for early detection of cases, the suspicion index and one workable definition has been worked out so that on the basis of that, staff can detect these cases by both active and passive surveillance is certainly going on, but active surveillance mechanisms have been also instituted. And an intense information education and communication drive was taken so that people are made aware that who are likely to suffer from Kalajar, and once they suffer, where to go for treatment and other investigations. And in order to provide complete treatment, and drug provisions were made, there was no shortage of drugs, and strengthening of referral mechanism for complicated cases. Other initiatives were also taken so that the patient can have higher compliance for treatment. The second approach was integrated vector control. Indoor residual spraying is the key to success. DDT, 2 rounds of spray, plus in some areas now resistance are being reported, so we can go for other kind of drugs, other insecticides. Environmental management by maintenance of sanitation hygiene, particularly as the habitat of the sandfly is cracks and crevices of houses. So by managing the house conditions, things can be taken care of. Even incentives for constructing small houses have been taken care by the government. Then supporting interventions in terms of behavioral change communication for social mobilization. Because social mobilization is an important part. Many people are reluctant to come to the treatment centers because of a variety of reasons. And if it is they are informed well, they are well supported well, they are brought to the centers and efficient treatment is done, probably their confidence in the health system will increase. And this is likely to bring about behavioral change communication. Then infrastructure convergence. It is often said that if you want to succeed in any program, must reach to each and everyone. We must adopt appropriate technologies, and there must be intersectoral convergence for improving the efficiency of the system. So all departments which are linked to housing and other departments and extension departments, they're made aware so that Kalajar elimination becomes a dream. Which is considered a dream can be a reality. Capacity building by training of the staff from different levels of care, from sub-center, from PSC, from community health center, district, and as well as community volunteers, including ASA, integrated social health activists, because they have opportunities to visit many places, and if they are aware about the suspicion index of Kalajar, they can catch those cases and bring to the system. So capacity building of the staff and monitoring and evaluation of the program on day-to-day basis becomes key input for key strategies for Kalajar elimination. So just to summarize, we have to take into account that the reservoir of the disease is reduced by efficient parasite elimination and disease management, and also the transmission potential of the vector. If the vector density is reduced, the chances of disease transmission will be less. For efficient mobilization of the staff cases from the periphery, there is need for the capacity building of the staff as well. In the program, diagnostic tools in the form of rapid diagnostic kits have been provided so that Kalajar cases can be oncocytokine have been provided so that immediately the disease can be diagnosed. And there are many drugs available. Kalajar has a long history of drugs, ureasteroline, monosodium gluconate, then amphotericin B. Beltofacin is a very effective oral drug which can be given for 28 days. Indoor residual spray with 50%, 50% for vector control twice a year has been considered as another important initiative has been taken in this direction. And incentives to the Kalajar patient towards loss of wages. Because if a patient, most of the victims of Kalajar are poor patients, and if they come for treatment, they lose money because they are not gainfully employed. So, an incentive has been given for that purpose, rupees 50 per day during the period of treatment. And also, those persons who are coming there, they have been provided with other support in terms of food, free diet support to the patient, and one attendant accompanying the patient. The purpose was that so that the compliance to the drugs and complete treatment becomes the key to success. Because one of the problem is that most of the cases don't complete the entire course of therapy. Incentives to ASHA for rupees 20 for per patient, rupees 50 for referring a suspected case, or rupees 150 after completion of treatment after confirmation through rapid diagnostic kits. So incentive-based schemes at the periphery have been launched so that the cases from the periphery can be brought out to the test. Government was also conscious of the fact that if you want to succeed in this particular program, then we need to have the involvement of consultants or technical supervisors, and for this purpose, support to states for engaging 46 consultants and 276 Kalajar technical supervisors in 46 this year under World Bank supported project has been initiated in this program so that these experts can provide technical inputs from time to time. So, as we see that for these two important diseases, filaria and Kalajar, which are contributing, the first disease is causing to morbidities or disabilities. The second disease, Kalajar, is causing death among the people. Government have taken key initiatives, and strategically we are very sound. That there is enough evidence that if these strategies are are implemented in a proper manner, there's every chance of success. However, the one point that has to be taken into account, that in any program we must know where we stand, and that is why monitoring, supervision, and independent evaluations have been also considered as the key input in this program. There is no dearth of logistic drugs, case detection mechanisms have been streamlined, surveillance mechanisms both in terms of active and passive selection have been streamlined so that we can take care of, can detect cases of Kala and we can manage these cases efficiently. Thank you very much for visiting.